I just have one question for you, mate. What on earth is a socceroo? I have no idea. I remember back in about 1995, and Cherie may remember, she was in our church at that time, and I heard about something called the crows. So naturally I thought of those horrible black birds that fly over. So I had to ask someone, what is the crows? So they then informed me it was a new South Australian AFL football team. So I will never talk to you about sport. Quite frankly, I would rather watch the paint dry. So I'm very un-Australian, and I don't like tomato sauce on my pies either, I'm a little bit embarrassed about that. Anyway, let's have a look at today's message. Our theme this month is empowered money, and Pastor Joe has asked me to speak to you about the power of a budget. Never thought I'd be talking about the B word in church, but anyway, it's this one, budget. And the first thing we'll get into that in a minute or two, but the first thing I want to say to you is that money is spiritual. There is a connection that Jesus taught us between our heart and our money. In fact, Matthew chapter 6 and verse 19 to 21, Jesus says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." The scripture says that money, there's nothing wrong with money, but it is the love of money that is the root of all evil. So when we are obsessed with money, that's when it becomes our master and not our servant. But like a lot of things that Jesus teaches, he doesn't actually tell us how to store up treasure in heaven. Which reminds me of the story about three ministers were having a coffee. One was a Protestant, one was the local Catholic priest, and one was a rabbi. And they got to talking about how do you guys get paid? You know, how do you get a salary? Do you get a wage? How does all that work? So the Catholic priest said, our church is pretty simple. We take up the collection, we send it into head office, and they send us back a paycheck. And the Protestant pastor said, well, ours is all done locally. We have a church board, we take up the collection, we have two people count it, it gets banked, and the board sets our salary, and that's how we get paid. So they turned to the rabbi and said, well, how do you get paid? Oh, he said, very simple. He said, we take up the collection, and he said, I get all the money in front of me, and I throw it up to God, and what he keeps, and what comes back is mine. I guess the thought police will be out after me tomorrow. But let me suggest to you how we might consider storing up our wealth in heaven. And this is a passage from Luke 16 that has just been tremendously helpful to me over the years. And there are three steps here, in a sense, or three things that follow on from each other. The first thing he says is, one who is faithful and very little is also faithful in much. And one who is dishonest in a very little is also dishonest in much. Jesus is really, in a sense, stating a law that's a little bit like the law of gravity. You may not see the law of gravity, you may not believe in it, but I'll guarantee that if you got up on top of this roof, providing you didn't fall through, but if you fell off, you will definitely hit the ground. That's completely unavoidable. You're not going to float off into space, you'll come crashing down. And this is a law of life, if you like to put it that way, that if a person is not faithful with little things, they are not going to be faithful over big things. And I don't know, have you ever said the if only? You know, if I only had another $100 a week, then I'd be okay. Oh, if I only earned another $200 a week, then I could do this, or then I could tithe. You have to work with what you have. And I think Pastor Tim's already talked about this briefly. And then Luke 16:11 says, if then you've not been faithful in the unrighteous wealth, who will entrust to you the true riches? What are true riches? Do you think seeing your family members come to faith in Christ, is that a rich thing? I think it's amazing. Seeing the sick healed, which we prayed for today, that's the true riches. Seeing a broken person restored, that's true. Seeing a marriage restored that's broken down. Seeing wayward children come back. These are the true riches. And somehow, I do not know how, Jesus is saying the entrusting the true riches to us has something to do with how faithful we are with our money. How many of you know the Korean pastor? I think he passed away now, Yonggi Cho. Any of you heard of him? Came out to Australia. I think it was probably about the late 70s, and just an amazing, amazing man of God. But he talked about this principle, and he ended up having the largest congregation in the world. Plane loads of pastors went over to Korea to see what he was doing and see what God was doing. And he talked about the growth of his church. And he said every season that came where he felt prompted by the Holy Spirit that their church was going to lift into a new level of growth was connected with his own personal giving. And so he would give more over and above his regular tithe. And as that cost him something in the spirit, God released more people to salvation. Isn't that a strange thing? But it's here in the scripture. If you're not being faithful in unrighteous wealth, who will entrust to you the true riches? And then Luke 16:12, it goes on, if you've not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? Now, I remember some years ago, our church administrator said to me, it takes 54 people to put on Sunday service. I said, really? That many people? She said, yes. By the time you add it all up, the people helping with the parking, welcoming people at the door, taking up the collection, leading the worship, running the cafe, 54 people to make it happen on Sunday. I don't know how many it is now, Tim. You would probably still the same. So what does this verse mean? It means that as we come to faith in Christ and find our feet and start to grow, there's a desire to be of service. But you're not going to be a lone ranger out on your own doing your own thing. You're going to be a part of the team. And there will be people that you are answerable to and submitted to who will be your leadership. Now, if you're not faithful in what you're given to do, then you won't be ever given a ministry of your own. I started preaching about 103 years ago, teaching Sunday school to little kids. And that's where I cut my teeth. And I was going to be a Sunday school teacher for the rest of my life. But because I was faithful with those handful of little kids, then the pastor entrusted me, poor fool him, to preach on Sunday. And I remember my first sermon. You love this, Tim. I've been a Christian for 6 months. Pastor trusted me to preach, and I preached my heart out for 13 minutes. Everything I'd learned in 6 months. Now I can't even do the introduction in 13 minutes. So. But if you're yearning for a ministry of your own, be faithful with the ministry that's given to you. That's what this is saying. That's what this is saying. Because God will see and God will know. But he's not going to trust ministry until we are trustworthy. You see, let's say you're on a roster to do something here in the church, and you just decide to sleep in and not bother to turn up or let anybody know you're not coming. Now, Is that the end of the world? Well, no, but it's annoying. So why would you be given any higher responsibility? If you can't turn up, that's being faithful with small things. Now, fortunately, none of this is hard to do because none of it is dependent upon our own energy and our own strength. This is where the new creation the rubber hits the road, because one of the fruits of the Spirit is faithfulness. And remember, it is the fruit of the Spirit. It's not your fruit, it's not my fruit, it's not something we generate up or work up or sweat about. He is faithfulness, total faithfulness. Has he been faithful to you? Thank God he's been faithful. And so if we are struggling in this area, we need to lean into the Spirit of faithfulness who lives inside of us, and his faithfulness becomes our faithfulness, and we can do what God wants us to do. So before we get into the budget, let's have a look at a couple of scriptures about money. Proverbs 21:5 says, "The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty." God is the greatest planner that has ever been. He planned for your salvation. He planned for the salvation of the world. And so it behooves us to become people who make plans. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. Proverbs 21:20 says, "Precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it." And 1 Corinthians 16:2 says, "On the first day of every week, each of you is to put something aside," again planning, store it up, planning, "as he may prosper, so that there will be no collecting when I come." They were taking up collections to support the poverty-stricken church back at Jerusalem. So Paul is giving instructions to the Corinthian church. But again, on the first day of every week, put something aside. That talks about deliberate planning, setting something aside, saving up. So let's now have a look at a budget. Now, I'm going to go into some figures and stuff, and you may not be able to relate to it, but in a congregation of this size, I just have to give it out to everybody, and where it rests, and where it doesn't, that's fine. You can check on your emails and Facebook. Did that come up? Oh, yes, it did. It's not on the back screen. Okay, so there are 7 steps. There's 8 actually, but the 8th one's not on here. 7 steps on how to set up a budget. Number 1, calculate your income. Now, the only income you can budget with is the income that you actually receive. Now, if you're on a salary or a wage, you'll be fully aware that the tax man comes along and grabs a big chunk of it before you ever see it. So you can't budget with your gross income. You have to budget with your take-home pay or your net income. You may have different sources of income. You could have a wage, you might have dividends from shares, you may have some Centrelink benefits, you might have some interest coming in off your enormous savings account. Whatever the streams are, you put it all together and say, okay, this is my income. And your income might be weekly, might be fortnightly, could be monthly. I remember a family I had in a previous church. He was ex-World War II RAF, and he had a RAF pension. They used to get their pension every 3 months. So they had to really learn how to live week by week with getting money every 3 months. So however you get it, you calculate your income. The next step is to track your expenses. And number 3, and this is the genius of the budget I'm going to show you. It's not my budget, by the way. It comes from Christians Against Poverty. And I'll come to that in a moment. Number 3 is to categorize your spending. There are 2 different kinds of spending. One is where you buy stuff and consume it. So you go to the grocery store, the supermarket, and you buy your shopping. And you go home and then you spend the next few days eating your way through or using up what you've bought. So you buy it, then you consume it. That's one type of expense. The other is the reverse of that. You consume it and then you pay for it. Things like your electricity, your gas, your car registration, things like that. So categorising your spending is number 3. Number 4 is set financial goals. Number 5, with all of that in mind, create your budget plan. Number 6, monitor and adjust. And number 7, stick to your budget. Be faithful with small things. And number 8, which is not on that list, is this one. And that is, if you are a couple, we can get this to work. If you are a couple, you need to do your budget together. Because if you think about married life, each partner has come into that marriage with a background from their own family. Like my dad always used to say, now boys, you need to save up, you need to save money, even if it's only 2 shillings a week. That's 20 cents for those under 25. You need to save money, but my dad never saved money. So we didn't save money. So it wasn't so much as, if Dad had been a saver and demonstrated that to us, I'm sure us kids would have done it, but it wasn't that important to my dad, even though he told us it was. So they were his values. And again, if you've heard me conduct a wedding, I like to explain that men and women, despite what our culture tells us, and they don't even know what a woman is now. Have you seen some of that on the news? Anyway, what a country. Anyway, the thought police have got enough to track me down for, so I better not get into that one. But have you noticed that men and women are different? And men and women have very different values. Like my darling wife, who can't be here this morning, she loves her jewellery. And she has a great big box with all this jewellery. Now, what? I don't get that. I don't do jewellery. I don't understand jewellery. She's got one piece in there that was from her much-loved grandmother. I understand that. But, so if that's important to her, but it's completely unimportant to me, do you see how we could end up having an argument if she wants to go and buy a new ring or a necklace or something like that? So trying to get the two different value systems together can only be resolved by sitting and talking and coming to agreement. Husbands and wives have to be in unity. In fact, I looked up what are the reasons for breakdown of marriage, and money problems is number 3 on the list. The first one is infidelity. The second one is lack of communication, which is really hard to believe in Australia, isn't it? I mean, Aussie blokes are brilliant communicators. And the third one is money. Fighting over money breaks up marriages. Pretty scary. So please, if you're a couple, now this is just Kevin, not the Bible, one partner needs to be the treasurer. So what do I mean by that? Well, okay, you build your budget together and you agree on, yes, we're going to spend money on that. No, we're not going to spend money on that. Yes, no, etc., etc. Work all that out. But usually it's more convenient and sensible for one of the partners to be the one that pays the bills and, monitors the expenditure. But you need to come together every 6 months or so and just review the budget, because things change and new needs arise. So let me now take you to a budget. There we go. Now I just want to explain briefly to you what CAP stands for Christians Against Poverty. And for 12 years, from 2010 to 2022, we were an outpost or a service outlet for the CAP ministry. And we used to teach people how to do budgets. We used to sit with people that were in debt, and we had a whole program of people working to get them out of debt and so forth. But it kind of came to an end. Seasons do come and go, so we're no longer in the CAP system. but we certainly do use their budget, and we continue to teach the budget system. Now, the budget system is built around 4 bank accounts. We have one bank account that is the main bank account into which all the income goes, and then we have 3 other accounts into which the expenditures and the savings go. So let me just take you through this. So the first one is a cash account. Now, this is where we're categorising things that you buy and then consume. So you'll have, now I've just put some figures in. They're completely meaningless to you because you've got to have your own figures. But I did a little bit of a survey. I tried to find out what average wages are. And I've done this budget around a couple bringing home $2,400 a week. Now, you may not be in that level. You might be more, might be less. That's fine. I just need to give you the principles and the ideas. So things that you buy and then consume are things like food, petrol, leisure. You might like to go out for dinner once a week or cinema or something like that. Personal care, clothing and footwear. This is a bit of a funny one. That's not coming up there? Disappeared. Don't know what's happening there, guys. I'm pressing the button, but nothing's happening. Now we really got nothing. Here we go. Clothing and footwear is an interesting one. Often when I'd be sitting with people that were struggling with debt, and we were putting a plan together to get them out of debt, and I'd say, well, how much do you spend on clothing? And a lot of people say, oh, nothing. I thought, oh, that's rather odd. I can see that you're wearing clothes today, so somewhere you must buy some clothes. You may buy them from the op shop, that's fine. So we put a budget in. Medical, chemist, haircuts. This is not working again. You got to love technology. It was working before. See, I've got a screen up there and you've got one here. There we go, it's back again. Now we're working. By the way, when you see Pastor Paul from the Gawler Church, give him a big pat on the back. You know how hard it is to make this work on a PowerPoint? There's actually got to put a formula in for each little bit. And I said, mate, I can't do it, and he did it for me. So thank you, Paul. Now, this is a weekly budget, by the way. Now, yours might be fortnightly or monthly, that's fine. So we add all that up, and that comes to $625 a week for you to buy stuff that you then consume. The next one is what we call our regular payments. And these are things that you consume and then pay for. So I've got things like mobile phones, mortgage or rent. And again, these are just figures I've come up with. Electricity. Now what I've done here is I've reduced everything back to weekly. Now, we get our electricity bill at home every month. You might get yours every quarter. So what you do is if it's monthly, you multiply that by 12, divide by 52 or 26 if you get paid fortnightly. So bring it all back to your pay date, your pay system. Gas and water, council rates, school expenses, house insurance, car insurance. You might have a gym membership. You might be paying off a car. And I've said these people send their kids to a Christian school, and then they tithe, and that comes to $1,605. Now, you may have other things that you consume and pay for. Like, how many people have got Netflix? Oh, a few people. So, you know, that's something you consume and then you pay for. So what you do with your regular payments, you set up B-pays or direct debits so that it's all just done automatically. All you have to do, if you're on this budget, is put $1,605 in that account every week and forget about it. Now, can you pay things like electricity and gas and water weekly? Yes, you can. They love it. They call it bill smoothing. And when your bill comes in, you might be a bit in front, you might be a bit behind. It doesn't matter, just ignore that. Just keep paying the weekly or fortnightly amount. And then our number 3 account, and these are, keep in mind, these are 3 separate bank accounts. And this is where we start saving money. So we have things like future needs. Now, future needs is like a contingency. This is stuff that goes wrong. Where you start a winter, our gas heater broke down, so, oh no. So now we've got to get the gas guy in to service the heater. As, I don't like being cold in winter, do you? I don't like being hot in summer either, but... so we're going to budget $40 for that. Your car rego, again, these are all weekly figures. And can I suggest if you do have a car and you're paying your registration, please avoid paying monthly or quarterly. Pay annually, because by paying in their increments, you pay a lot more over the year. So now gifts are important. Birthday presents, Christmas presents. We're just budgeting $20 a week here. Would it be pretty nice for you to get to Christmas and have an account with $1,000 in it that you could go Christmas gift shopping with? That'd make all the girls happy. Just never ceases to amaze me. Again, the values of men and women. How mothers love to have that very first birthday party. It is a big deal. And I think, that kid's never going to remember. But the mothers do. So it's very important, guys. Don't scrimp and save. If your wife wants to have a 1-year-old birthday party, for goodness sake, do it. Car maintenance. Cars wear out. They need servicing. Tyres need replacing. So we're going to budget $55 a week for that. Now, this is a really important one. Every holiday that you never have, you will never have. That's pretty deep, isn't it? And one of the great memories I have of growing up as a little kid, my parents always took us for a holiday. We lived inland Queensland, and we'd go to the beach. And my dad worked in the railway, and the railway in Queensland in those days provided tents for their workers. I don't know if my dad did it legally or illegally, but he always borrowed a railway tent. So we would go to the beach and my dad would set up the tent and stenciled right across it in big black letters, QGR, Queensland Government Railways. And that was our holiday. And we'd go fishing and crabbing, and we'd have Weet-Bix in a tin plate with powdered milk for breakfast, bread and plum jam for lunch, and all the fish and crabs and oysters you could eat for tea. What a great holiday. Wonderful times, wonderful memories. So Jackie and I always take a holiday, and when our kids were little, even though sometimes we couldn't afford much, we would always get away and have a break and build some memories. So please, please have holidays. We will give you permission from the church to take holidays, won't we, Pastor Tim? Absolutely, because we're going to take them. So I'm budgeting $40 a week for holidays, and that comes to $170. Now, all of that, and maybe a little hard to see in the white, is $2,400 a week, and so we distribute $625, $1,605, and $170 into those 3 accounts. So just to Just to summarise that. Number one, all incomes received deposit into one bank account. Set up recurring transfers to the 3 budget accounts. Use cash or debit card for your cash expenses, and if you use a debit card, make sure you keep a record of it. Now, if we budgeted in this budget $360 a week for grocery shopping. Now, if you spend $350, yoo-hoo, you got $10 over, go and have a coffee and shout yourself a treat. If your bill comes to $370, you got to put something back. So stick to the budget. Set up recurring payments for all the regular payments, the things that you consume and then pay. And then for your savings, set up high interest bearing account for your savings. And if you just keep an eye, you can go in and Google online high interest savings accounts, and some of them are paying pretty decent interest at the moment. Keep in mind that if you do earn interest on a savings account, the tax man would like to have some of that, so you have to declare that as a part of your income when you do your tax return. Now, if this is helpful to you, the next one. So I can offer you a paper budget. That's what it looks like. You probably won't be able to see it from there. This is the CAP budget workbook. I've still got some of these left. You're welcome to have that. If you would like to have that in an Excel spreadsheet, so it'll do all the adding up and subtracting for you, I'm happy to send that to you as well. I've got my email address up there, and if you'd like to just flick me an email, or you can see me today, and I'll make sure that you get that budget format. And if you need any help putting it together, and you don't mind sharing your information with me, I'm happy to sit with you and help you to put that together. It'll be completely confidential. I'm not smart enough to even remember what your circumstances are, so you're quite safe, and I'd be really happy to help you with that. Now, I want to finish on something else. Matthew 25:14-18 is the parable of the talents. And Jesus said, it'll be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents. Now, it's really unfortunate that the translators have translated this word as talents, because we think that's an ability. In fact, in that day, it was just an amount of money. So in one modern translation, it says he gave him 5,000 coins, and to another he gave 2,000 coins, and to another he gave 1,000. So it's a sum of money that the master entrusts to these 3 servants. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. And the story goes on how the master comes back and he commends servant 1 and servant 2, but condemns servant 3 because he didn't do anything. Now you'll also notice in here that he gave these sums of money to each according to his ability. Somebody said to me once, if you want to be a millionaire, you better learn how to manage and handle $1 million. And I don't know about you, I know a few millionaires. I don't know any billionaires, but I know some millionaires. And I used to think, a millionaire, wouldn't that be great? I've got $1 million in the bank. But what I discovered was that millionaires, they might have $1 million in the bank, but they also have businesses, they have companies, they have boards, they have staff, they have problems, they have issues. And there's a lot more to becoming wealthy than just stacking up money in the bank. So what I want to suggest to you, just picking up this whole theme of being faithful in small things, I wonder what ability you have. What could you do to better yourself? Is there an opportunity where you work for promotion? Is there an opportunity for you to start a business? And starting a business and owning a business, not for everybody, I understand that. But I believe Jesus is just really encouraging us to put to work what we have. Just a quick personal testimony. I had about 10 years, back up to about mid-80s, working full-time as a pastor, and that season came to an end, and I went into the business world and went into the real estate industry. I went to TAFE for 3 years, one day a week, 4 terms a year for 3 years. Did that for 12 months. I got a salesperson's license, but I kept going for 2 more years to get an agency license. Now, when I started, I was getting high credits, high distinctions, and after 3 years, I was happy just to skim through. Man, I got sick of it. But I stuck with it, and I got my qualification, and in the fullness of time, had an opportunity to start my own business. Now, it's too complicated to tell you the whole story, but at our peak, I had 13 full-time employees. Now, I'm pretty proud of that. Jesus said that Paul said we've been created to do good works, and I used to think good works was preaching and being a missionary and teaching Sunday school. That is good work, but I tell you what, creating employments, they all thought that was pretty good. I remember driving up to work one morning and 9 of my staff had got there before me, and here's all their cars. And I thought, Lord, I can't believe this. I've got to pay 9 monthly car payments from my business. I felt really, really proud about that. Now, if I hadn't put in the hard yards and done 3 years of TAFE, I made some really good friends there too, by the way, which was a bit of a side benefit. But 3 years of slogging away to get a qualification because God knew, and I thought I knew, that I had the ability to be a business person. But if I hadn't done that, it would never have happened, and those people would not have had employment. So what can you do with what you have? Is there a place of promotion where you work that you could get if you got more qualifications? My brother Dennis, who some of you know, Dennis left school when he was 14, and my brother Danny, won't mind me telling you, he was absolutely hopeless at school. Now, back in the 50s, we passed exams and got percentages, and if little Dennis got 51%, we had a party because, oh, look, wow, Dennis has done so well. He did 51%. So he left school when he was 14. And then he got a job as an apprentice carpenter. And back in those days, it was a 5-year training course. And so he got through his course and became quite a good builder. And then he saw another opportunity to go into business. So he did another 3 years of I think they call it distance learning now, by correspondence, and became a master builder. And at age 22, he had his own company, and I think he was employing something like 6 or 10 people. Not bad when you're 22. And boy, he's got some stories to tell about things that got. He tells a story once he was up on a roof and he fell off the roof. This has got nothing to do with the message. The story just occurs to me. And he probably would have been killed, but he felt something grab him and put him back on the roof. And he swears to this day that God sent an angel to save his life. So he comes down to see us from time to time. So when he does, go up and ask him to tell you that story. And he's got a lot of other stories as well. But he put to work what he had. Here's a little dunce kid, at the bottom of the class at school, becomes a master builder with a company. And he did that for several years, and then he changed professions and went into the natural health industry, where he's literally helped hundreds of thousands of people all over Australia, New Zealand. But anyway, that's another story. So what could you do? Because God has given us abilities. We need to discover what they are, and with his help, grow our ability so that we can do more and be more. Had one of our conferences one year, I forget what the speaker was talking about, but he said, pastors, there's not too many problems that you've got in your life that $1 million couldn't help. And I thought, yeah, I got a few problems that $1 million would help. So creating money and creating wealth enables us to be a blessing. Pastor Tim talked to you about this beautiful new building program we're hoping to do over the next few years, and what a blessing that will be in the community. But it's not going to happen if we don't have the money, and the money comes from God's people. So when we bought this building, we asked the congregation to make donations. We had 2 businessmen, I wasn't one of them, that donated $50,000 each. So from 2 people, we got $100,000. That's not bad, is it? You would remember Trish. Trish is our bookkeeper. And others gave as they could and so on, and we raised the money. And today we're debt-free. So what could you do? I just put that out there as a challenge to you. What could you do? But it starts off being faithful with what you are. If you're an employee, be the best employee in your place of work. Turn up on time. Put in the extra miles. Put in the extra effort. It will be noticed. It will be noticed. Okay, as Forrest Gump would say, that's all I have to say about that. So Pastor Tim, we'll hand back to you to close the service.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Kevin. Can we stand to our feet as we close? I was trying to remember a quote that I'd read before, and I thought this would be an apt way to finish